trip, faculty, undergraduate faculty on the LA campus. And we're glad to have you here for this messy conversation, which, as I said, is going to be our final messy conversation for the spring quarter. And what a spring quarter we've had. We've had some amazing messies on trans visibility, third culture kids, award-winning journalist Shima talking about telling stories and social justice, BIPOC queer archives, DEI issues. It's been a lot that we've covered. Just a reminder that if you miss a messy conversation, but you think, wow, I wish I had heard that, almost all of them are on our YouTube channel. So you can always pick up a missed messy there. We're working hard. I think we're about done finalizing our summer schedule of messy conversations. So we'll be releasing that in the coming weeks, and we're looking forward to that. Today, we have a member of the Messy Conversations planning team, Rosa Garza Marino, joined with Changerine Bay. And they're going to be talking about Zapatismo and the work of Gloria Anzaldúa and vocabularies of anti-racism. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll get to you in the second half of our time together and bring you into the conversation. Thank you for that. I'll hand it off to Rosa.
Hello. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. So I would like Tanji to say something about yourself or hello, whatever you want, just to acknowledge that we're teaming up on this.
Hi. You said, Rosa, that I could say something about myself, and I have some fabulous news to share. I just got to start volunteering at California Botanic Garden, and today was my first day. I got to go train in the greenhouse, and that's really exciting. So I'm going to share that with you because that's definitely given a boost to my day today. So.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, thank you, Tanji. Okay, so in order to get on topic, Tanji and I chose to share with you first some context to put everyone on the same page, invite you to be like in this same page with this topic. And the first one is about Zapatismo, right? So what is Zapatismo? And I would go with some ideas for you very briefly. So in the early hours of January 1st, 1994, the very day the NAFTA, that is the North American Free Trade Agreement, was implemented, an indigenous movement still active today formed the Zapatista Army for National Liberation. Okay, their acronym is EZLN. The movement originated in one of the poorest areas of Mexico, and it denounced neoliberalism as a scheme of Western cultural and political forces that makes profit by impoverishing the vulnerable. So Zapatistas declared war against the Mexican government for joining the agreement, and after a brief armed conflict that never intended to really seize power, they were not after power, they were like a calculated move. They moved back to the borderlands in the mountains and dedicated themselves to writing, publishing, hosting some community dialogues, and lately traveling. So that would be Zapatismo big picture, right? And with that, I give it the mic to Tanji if you want to go over another big picture that is part of our topic.
Yeah, so I'm kind of bringing in a perspective of talking with Gloria Anzaldúa's work. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm not going to do her work justice, but broadly, she is a Chicana feminist, queer writer and storyteller who is most known for her work on borderlands. And so already you can start to see some overlaps between Zapatistas and Anzaldúa. And she also talks about mestiza consciousness. So, what does it mean to grow up on the geopolitical, but also other kinds of borderlands, and straddling the two or more cultures and the kind of consciousness that creates within the positionality and embodiments, right? And she also does, she's known for her work on spiritual activism as well, although arguably she's lesser known for that, just because that gets a lot messier when we bring in the spiritual world and concepts to these conversations. Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Is there anything you want to add to that, Rosa?
Well, just the playful approach of Gloria Anzaldúa with language, that she would combine so many genres and languages that I would say is quadrilingual, like a tetralingual, like including Nahuatl, indigenous language, Spanish, English, and Spanglish. So it's remarkable, really remarkable approach to language. Just that, but I think it's implying what you just said. Well, and I would give another piece of context, guys. There's much to talk or think about Zapatismo. It's a very rich topic, and Anzaldúa as well. So for the purpose of today's topics, we would like to just share with you how this conversation came to be as well. So that give us, finally be on the way our topic. So a few months ago, Tanji and I were in a collegial meeting exchanging ideas about how to resist polarization that is now that we see in different environments, and then how to look at other people's perspectives from their own points of view, which is a huge topic in ethnography and sociology, how to look things from another angle that is not yours. So at some point, I remember in that conversation, and you correct me, at some point, I felt the need to share my interest in two Spanish language words that I'm going to put in the chat right now. Two Spanish words that when you look at them together, they feel totally out of order. They're dissonant, like a messy grammar. Like you never see them really, never see them together. So it would be as in English. Let me write this in English. Let me see. Like this, as weird as this. Like it's, you look at this and it's in Spanish or English, that doesn't make sense. It's a messy grammar. So because this muy otro wording in Spanish was introduced by Zapatistas precisely. So I pay way more attention to those words. So look, I investigated, and Zapatistas are notorious for a deliberate politics with this messy grammar in their messaging. So I knew that. So I knew it was not a typo. So it was a calculated political communication strategy meant to engage and amplify. That is their thing. So meaning in their case is turned elusive, and therefore it activates you because it demands to be figured out. It's something that I have to figure out. So it instantly triggers this curiosity and seeks investigation. And that is a very interesting political approach. So when focusing on muy otro or other very, such type of investigation really will lead you to look in the eye many ways to notice how oppression of the other works is about bigotry. You're talking about otherness. Otro means other, another, and start thinking about why are they using this so insistently. So if you look at bigotry in the eye, that would be part of their statement, then you can discover ways to dismantle it. So racism, homophobia, transphobia, religious intolerance, sexism. So I personally see muy otro politics as provocations to dig in from the bottom to discover how these mechanisms work, as opposed to looking at them top down. But when you look at things top down, you don't discover anything, you cover up. So this is the game of the grammar and the game and the language that somehow Zapatista inspired, right? So bear with me. Fortunately, Tanji were very intrigued and asked to what extent my muy otro or very other or other very would somehow remind us of the concepts explored by Gloria Anzaldúa. I don't remember specifically, Tanji, you were talking about this mestiza consciousness.
Specifically, when you said my otro, it made me think of Anzaldúa's work on Nos Otras, and because you put it in the chat, I'll put it in there as well, just so you can kind of see the comparison. Yeah, so Anzaldúa has this concept of Nos Otras, so this us and other with this hyphen, right? And that automatically just popped up in my head, and I asked Rosa just what are the overlaps there? Is there any way that these connect to each other or diverge? And I think that's kind of what got the conversation started. And I think we actually, in talking more, started to find other fascinating forms of overlap and potential in these kinds of works.
Yeah. But then back then that meeting was over. We didn't have time to do anything. And I said, like, Tanya, why don't we propose a messy conversation to explore more about continue that conversation that we couldn't have, right? And coincidentally, this Wednesday is going to be the 20th anniversary of Anzaldúa's passing, the day after tomorrow. And then we can honor that and remember her. And also, this 2024 is the 30th anniversary of Zapatismo. So everything fits in place. So here we are, with such a introduction. So what I know about the Zapatistas, that when they returned to the upper lands after the armed conflict and they went to their lands, Zapatistas replaced their weapons for these calculated strategies to grab attention, right? So they were trying to make injustice visible, inspire solidarity, and they needed to protect themselves from retaliation. And we're talking about the early 90s, Mexico, they were exposing themselves to different kinds of violence. So we're talking about the mid-90s. The internet was just getting started. I'm going to put this here. Their strategies, I would say, for you to remember them in case they're interesting for you. Six strategies that they followed to do their politics, right? So one was using the internet. The first really a resistant movement from particularly from indigenous populations that would use the internet way before the smartphones, way before the social media or all that kind of stuff. They were just, I'm gonna be visible so no one can crush me so easily, right? So then they were very careful with their branding. So they adopted this conspicuous thing of their flag, murals, ski masks, bandanas, and native textile fabrics. And they used the slogan, "Enough is enough." And it was a very powerful moment when they use all this combination of elements. They underscored this idea with and that's the reason I put there prefigurative activism, which means that they were enacting the kind of change they wanted to see happening. They were already organizing in the way they want society to be organized. They wanted to be autonomous and self-governing, and they were doing just that. So they started to enact their change, and that is how their politics was getting a lot of attention, especially in Europe, because still here is not mainstream in the US. There are places where it's recognized and followed, but it has grabbed attention from very interesting social movements all over the world. And they started to upload prolific writings, nonstop until today. And the one thing that in particular caught my attention was to see how they combine genres. So they can put something like fables, I don't know, fables or fables, like with moral stories, fables. So some kind of poetic fables with stand-up comedy. They use humor. So you see stand-up comedy, this is people in resistance and fighting, and they're this is interesting how they use this. And then they use chronicle to remember very precise historical issues. And then they would bring up some kind of a protest speech, and you as the reader of this or listener of this, you cannot help for being really, really intrigued of what's going on there. It's a storytelling, all that stuff, irony. So their catchphrases are deliberately constructed outside grammar. So that's another way to call attention, very unique of them. and it's really magnetic. It's touching. It's astonishing. We're going to share with you like a translations, links to translations if you are interested to see that translations of their work. And in this sense, Zapatista political creativity from the margins reminds us, again, Gloria Anzaldúa, and that's how we pick up the conversation. Finally, stop me.
So great to hear all the things you're saying. Yeah, so I think just with kind of this sort of broad topic, we just started to kind of really think with some just places of resonance, I think. And I think in just even diving into these places of resonance, I want to take up an Anzaldúan concept that Anna Louise Keating gives a little bit more terminology to. She talks about commonalities, pulling on Anzaldúa's work. But she emphasizes that commonalities aren't just sameness, but actually what she calls a potent brew of sameness, similarities, and differences that come out of all of those three together, right? And I want to hold that. I want to hold this conversation in that spirit, because I think there are plenty of ways in which there are resonance with some of the things that you're just talking about with the Zapatistas and Anzaldúa's work. But I think there's important ways in which they might diverge, and we want to hold all of those together, particularly in the spirit of Muy Otro, right? It's the differences that can actually, and even mestiza consciousness, it's the differences, it's the ways that things don't fit that can also bring about really important insights. And those differences, I think, in a more Western oriented world, there is that impulse to erase the differences and only look at the commonality or the similarities, right? Or the samenesses. And so I just want to hold that. Like, I think I'm going to be more drawn to the ways in which there's some overlap and the things that you're saying. And I also just want to just put a big old arrow pointing to, let's also think with the ways that they might not converge. That's important as well. So that said, can I speak into a couple of things that are already kind of coming up?
Yes, please.
With your introduction.
Sure.
Along with Anzaldúa, so you talked about, the working with different genres, and Anzaldúa, in our brief introduction of her, she does that as well, mostly working with language. She works with an aesthetic and art, right? And she's bringing these things together also to bring about a different kind of consciousness, where the art that she creates with a written word isn't supposed to be separate from the reader. So she wants to hail the reader and bring them in, such that there is an important sort of doing in the process of engaging with her work that I think is important. And I also want to note that I saw a couple of comments pop up, particularly that, be the change you wish to see in the world. Anzaldúa is known for saying, I change myself, I change the world, which seems to be this sort of echo of the Gandhi quote. And yet she says it in the context of actually about art. She's writing about art, right? Where she changes who she is in a story, and that changes the world. And I love holding those two things side by side, because she's also thinking about the inner work that we have to do, the ways in which we perform, I suppose the deep relationship between what we know and what we do aren't separate. And she's working with that, right? And so in her later work, The Path of Conocimiento, she draws on that inner work. And that also, again, echoes that sort of, I change myself, I change the world. That was one thing that popped up for me. It's just kind of thinking of some of those, the genres, the working with language, and the transformation that is hailed in that process, I think.
I appreciate that. Is like in a ways a strategy to plant doubt, to keep things in between. That is this concept of Nepantla that also Anzaldúa uses. That is the ambiguity, to be able to feel comfortable in ambiguity, so that I don't take for granted that the meanings are already resolved. And that again invites action, no complacency, action.
And maybe not even just comfort, right? Because the discomfort and the ambiguity can be a source of important information about how we relate to our world as well, right? And we want to pay attention to how the discomfort might move us to engage with certain topics, right? Now here, I think we're starting to speak a little bit more vaguely, but we can maybe start to move into language of anti-racism, which is the title of
Yes, please.
Well, did you want to add to anything that I said though?
I'm not adding anything right now. I was planning on bringing up some of the statements related to muy otro from the perspective of Zapatistas, if we can connect that to anti-racism element.
Sure.
And I would start with one element. So I must say Zapatistas have like principles, and they follow the principles, and the principles are articulated in ways that are always referring to the muy otro in one way or another. So I'm going to put in the chat one of the principles that I would like to discuss with Tanji to see what resonances we find between this approach and any related to Anzaldúa. There's a typo there with muy. Well. So the anti-power, Tanji, the idea of anti-power that is resist the top-down power by building a creative muy otro, like again, it's like some kind of adjective or noun. Muy otra democracy, muy otra justice, which is from below and from the left, and is constantly critical of the misuses of traditional power.
Did you want me to speak into that?
Let's see what resonates for you with this.
Well, the thing that comes up for me, and the thing that it makes me think of when, particularly from below or from the left, is Gloria Anzaldúa's concept of el mundo zurdo, right? Like the world of misfits, or the left-handed world, which is important to her work and her thinking, particularly for mestiza consciousness. The people who are both inside and outside of worlds have that different level of understanding of what's going on, right? I think that also fits with Jane Paul's comment, a world where many worlds fit. I'm not sure who you're quoting there, Jane, but it also made me think of El Mundo Zurdo, of a lot of different kinds of worlds coming together, and that being the valued thing, not the erased thing, because there is power there. I don't know how that aligns or doesn't with what you were saying with anti-power, because I think there is power there, and you could maybe say more about that. But there is a power in the difference, in the not fitting. And I think that relates to how language can work for transformation as well, right? So playing with grammar, so it's not quite what you expect, creates a kind of disorientation. And Anzaldúa writes about the ruptures in her path of conocimiento as the first step in transformation, is where the world isn't what we thought it was, or we're thrown from our familiar world such that it looks different, and we're forced into a different perspective and embodied relationship to our world. I think there's power and insight there. So I don't know how that fits with your thinking on the anti-power, but
well, it fits with anti-racism because it's pointing out to strategies that are coming from those that are having marginalized, and they are coming back from that marginalization. It's from below and from the left, which means I'm gonna be a radical way to say enough is enough. And that is an interesting guideline when you think about anti-racist vocabulary that would be presented with this kind of a context. So that would be one way to look at it, which is not the only way to look at it, fortunately.
But I mean, if you think of power and how it operates, the people who are comfortable in those power constructs, if that's the only insight that's valued, or that's the only conversation that is available, like, right, you don't see change. So that's another reason why the margins of the margins, or the below perspectives, are really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think valuing that muy otro-ness teaches us how to listen differently as well, right? Is that making sense?
Yeah, I find this possibilities of interpretation of the muy otro very productive in that way, the way you're doing it. Sanji. And then you're reminding me of the other statement that I wanted to bring up. This is not a principle from the Zapatistas, but it's exactly how they sign their messages. They always sign their messages, and then like we're talking about thousands of messages. Like they always sign from the mountains of the Mexican southwestern jungle, right? So they are defining the position of muy otro territory, their very other territory, radically other, so radically that is peripheral, not only in the compared to Mexico, but even within the place where they are in the margins of the margins. It's a borderland within a borderland. And they very intentional say, I put myself there. You didn't put me there. I am the one that chose that positionality because that's from that positionality that I'm going to bring up myself. And that is a very powerful statement. And I'm going to stay in the margin. I'm going to stay in the margins because that's where my voice is going to be more louder. So I wonder what resonates, if any resonates for you. I like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? Because I think so much of my work has been very confined to a US context, right? And I think of like who and what are the most marginalized groups in a US context, right? And learning to listen with those groups. Some of those I belong to, some of them I don't, right? But even just the place of the Zapatistas that they sign from is just this whole other reminder of there are so many other contexts beyond the US context of injustice and power dynamics, right? That demand recognition, attention, and deep engagement with, right? That seems really important. And that points to both an embodied and a physical geopolitical and land-based positionality, right?
And I cannot help, Tanji. Thank you so much for this additional interpretation of this. You're reminding me that this muy otro has these elements that is transpersonal, that has to do with these structures or locations, positionalities, geopolitics, all that stuff. But also there's a personal element of it, because when think about it as an identity, that, for example, this identity that sometimes shows in the writings, this I'm putting in the chat. So the muy otro is a partner in struggle. That is almost like a feather in your cap, right? A partner in struggle thrives in muy otra dignity and coalition building, because it's capable of being in struggle with the other. Again, you have vocabulary here that reminds us of that element of resisting of oppression by putting yourself before.
Well, it's something that's really important. And that level of coalition building, right? The emphasis on the unknowable worlds that are, you know, around us, right? I think that one diverges from Western constructs of knowledge that, you know, there are worlds that are unknowable to us, and kind of embracing that unknowability, not as a thing to be conquered or discovered, which is a Western and colonialist construct, right? But as a way of living within, really dwelling in the ambiguity, in the unknown. And that's an essential part of coalition building. I think there's so much in Western constructs and colonialist constructs that rests on competency as like allyship. Like, I need to know about these things, and if I don't, it's really scary. That need to know and that need to be competent can get in our way of coalition building, because then we stop listening to the things that we can't know, right? And that seems just really, really important.
Thank you for that, Tenji. So we reached the 4:30 mark of the session, so that we start paying attention to the chat. There's a comment here from Jane. that we have a quote that like this direct quote, we have it. Jane, do you want to share it?
Sure. Thank you, Rosa and Tanjin, who I don't know. It's great to see you, meet you. I just wanted to mention that line, "A world where many worlds fit," because as some people here have been in my classes where we talk about the solidarity economy, we always talk about the Zapatistas and that idea that there are many alternatives, that everyone brings something to the conversation, which is, I think, just what you were saying, Tanjin, about how do we collaborate. So thank you. Yeah, and that's all I know. So if you all know more, that'd be awesome.
No, thank you. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, one of the quotes that I have here is, we will build a world muy otro, where muy otro worlds can fit in, right? So it is a talking point that they have been bringing up constantly, and they insert the muy otro here and there, like a radical difference, radical alterity. And because of the recognition of radical difference, that's what builds respect and appreciation. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for contributing. We have Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea. Let me see if I'm seeing anything here, missing any. I don't want to miss anyone. Chelsea, do you want to comment on your posting, Chelsea? I feel very moved. I love it.
Sure, yeah, I feel just from hearing what's happening here, the student resistance that is happening now, and like really calling for divestments in universities and everywhere, and creating these communities where there's mutual aid happening, that feels very muy otra to me. I just wanted to name that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your application of this language. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Chelsea.
I mean, that came up in our conversation when we were talking about this, right? Of thinking about like the application of just very, very current important issues like the student encampments, like the protests, like Gaza itself, right? I don't know if I should say this because I don't know if it's going to take too much away from something, but I think this kind of fits with this competency model. I think, oh, how do I put this? I think the world has a sense of what Nazis are and what a Holocaust or a genocide is. And because of that, we can say that's not me, right? And because there's that distancing there, it's really hard to see oneself replicating those issues. And I think that that's playing out in a lot of what we're seeing of, yeah, this is a very incomplete thought. I think most of it's just like, yeah, I've been sitting with this, like, how do we talk about what's happening today in this, because there's so much happening there, very, very muy otra as well. I'm going to not fully complete that because it's not a fully complete thought. Seems to have something to do with the unknowable worlds, or the worlds that we can't and don't want to know. I don't know, like ... right? I hope that raises some spaciousness and some questions with other folks too, of kind of thinking and feeling the concept.
Mm-hmm. Well, something that Zapatistas, and that's what makes Zapatismo interesting to look at again in the context of the mid-90s, is that they were emerging in a media landscape where there was not yet turned into a mob culture. It was just emerging as a space, as a public space, the public sphere, to come out, to put myself in the world, and that and to share, right? That kind of stuff, and to build solidarity and to have conversations with whoever would be willing to participate. There was not this need to hijack conversations, to take over each other, and to replicate the same structures of power that we see in the non-virtual world, just to transfer them into this other landscape and to create a warfare there, right? So, and that's what makes it, I believe, that so complicated to address, because it has all these other elements there, as opposed to this very, I would say, I don't know if I should use this word, elegant or simple, or what would be the word that, like, I would get humble, that's the word, humble pen and paper to elaborate on my point, right? Without trying to rub it in anyone's screen or face or anything like that. That kind of throwing there. And I'm not sure that we can go back there to that landscape where you can have this exchanges of elaborate on my points without noticing that they're like an army of voices trying to crush it as soon as possible. So I think we need to find ways to live or enact the muy otro if we pick up this learnings from this line of thinking to the ways we relate to digital communication. Because that is creating a lot of the interpretation of everything that is happening too. So it just adds to the not interested in, it's not, there's not seem to be an interest on working forward. There seems to be an interest on grabbing attention to create eyes on screens.
And sorry, I guess I'm thinking in 5 directions right now, but one thing to clarify. So you had mentioned that part of how the Zapatistas approached things was using the internet at a time when the internet was just kind of becoming a thing. And am I understanding you correctly that you are thinking now with what the internet has become and how people use it and don't use it? Yeah, no, I mean, that was one of the first things I thought of when you had mentioned, even in our earlier conversations about using the internet, is that now it seems to be a way to put our voices out there, but not to listen, right?
Exactly.
And I've actually been following this little line of inquiry just in my personal interest in these issues of how much social media actually just helps us to be more grounded into our own points of view and perspectives, and actually doesn't create the conditions for listening in this way that Muy Ocho would demand, right? And that seems really important. I think that's related to some of the stuff that we're talking about, and maybe even Mary Lou's question here. I don't know if we want to pivot a little bit towards that.
Yes.
You know, so I don't know if you want to ask the question, Mary Lou, and expand on that before we dive
Please.
into it.
Well, yeah, I could speak to it a little bit. Yeah, I'm just curious about what kinds of ways these groups are articulating a kind of world they want to move toward. And I wondered if you wanted to speak to that.
I have some thoughts. I don't know. I don't want to trample over you, Rosa.
No, please start the response.
So something that Anzaldúa works with in her particularly her essay in Now Let Us Shift, where she talks about traveling the stages, the path of conocimiento, which is this ongoing process that gets made and remade of transformation and consciousness, right? And part of one's travels on you know, the path of conocimiento, the process of coming into knowledge, which is always fleeting, it's not a static place, is experiencing a sense of self as deeply connected with the earth, and you know, plants, animals, the earth. She says the earth is ensouled, and there is this process and one's travel along the path of conocimiento where they experience it as embodied sense of self. So not just an idea, but they experience that deep interconnection. And I think that that really points to the one of I guess, an aspect of the kind of world that Anzaldúa has in mind, where we feel deeply connected to each other and the earth in such a way that the conversation shifts from what are my rights to what are my responsibilities to this whole, to this interconnected whole. And that to me seems really important. That to me is a whole different kind of orientation to self, to others, to the earth, and a different embodied relationship to it, right? That I think makes a huge difference in how we approach any of these things. So that it's not just, you know, those people over there and this issue, or the narratives surrounding certain issues that might justify somebody suffering. We feel it differently, right? Such that an injustice to one is an injustice to all. And that changes our investments in that, right? It's not as easy to forget about the suffering of groups of people, but again, also the earth, which I think it gets really easy to leave the earth and plants and animals behind in conversations of social justice, because that can be so human focused, but that's also, I think, a really big part of it. So I'll pause there on that sense of responsibility and interconnectivity. If you had more, Rosa.
Thank you, Chelsea, for the song. Thank you. I'm pasting here one of my doodles this morning. I was doodling some ideas in case some questions about this could come up. But Marilu, the relationship with the land and with the resources that are part of what sustains life, it has been like a common to all native movements associated to this, as Tanji just mentioned, right? So there's something essential to that has been fundamental in the way the way they have been somehow neoliberalism, colonialism, and different versions of the same coin. I've been trying to erase this. That is, to erase their ability to have self-determination. Self-determination to decide how to live and where to live and how to go about their context or their resources. So they really focus on the means are the ends, so that they enact what they want to see in the world. And what they want to see in the world is where there's consensus building with the communities where you are located, right? And find ways to take care of your education, agriculture, and health, mainly those three elements that are the ones that are fundamental to exist. And then find ways that these resources are generated and distributed within the community somehow, as opposed to being in the hands of corporations or anyone that tries to trap you into this structures. So they want to stay away from those structures, to build their own structures, to maybe interact with the larger economy in a way that is not by impoverishing them. So they stay don't impoverish me, I just let them participate. That's fundamental. And there's one principle, and I would say the top principle of Zapatistas that I want to mention. Actually, two I want to mention. One is that they talk about mandar obedeciendo, which in English means leading by obeying the collective. So it's the principle of democracy, right? But in their case, it's so incorporated in everything they do that is these communities making decisions together and finding ways to find consensus, even though sometimes finding consensus is such a difficult process, because it's easier to take over. And just to get over with it and just do that top down, that kind of stuff. So the other road is complicated, right? So progressive movements have appreciated this. I see a question by Ayan, and I'm gonna go there in a second. And the other principle from Zapatista is nada para nosotros, everything for everyone. Is nothing for us, everything for everyone. That means that leaders are not about building like a structure of power that is so heavy that is crushing the bottom, right? So heavy structures are just like perpetrating the structure of power and don't letting breathe. So leaders cannot do that according to this model. So leaders, what they do is like like circulate resources so that the base is the one that is receiving this, to build this collective health, education, and food resources that sustain the communities in their own right. So this is the world where they live, and they want to extend this to others that want to participate in this kind of approach, like a kind of humane. How is community defined? Zapatista is community considered diverse community across race, religion, and ethnicity? Yes, I am. Yes, there's this element of I haven't read, and I'm not an expert in Zapatismo. I'm very interested. I know a lot about it, but I'm not the expert on Zapatismo. But what I do know is that intersectionality is not a concept that they have written about as such. But there's something in this movement in the context of Mexico culture of where women haven't been necessarily in the position of power traditionally. Zapatista, as one of the first statements that was very bold, is Zapatista women are creating a revolution within the revolution, which means we are disrupting our own Zapatista brothers to give us space. And women became very powerful within Zapatista, and Zapatistas acknowledge that women that there's not a barrier in those terms. Religiously, I'm not sure how that would work in that context. I haven't. But I would say that there's a discourse of openness and inclusion. The variety of religions that you see in the US, you don't see that in that area in Mexico, at least I don't see. But it would be welcome within the principles of inclusion that I have read about, or that I see in examples. And ethnicity, well, I am 52 linguistic groups are in Chiapas, where these guys come from. 52 different linguistic groups. So, and that includes ethnicity, right? There's a little bit of Maya and other at least 5 very solid ethnic groups with their language. So that creates in itself a universe of inclusion. So the notion of community seemed to be that one. Yeah, a policy. Yes, we have a links. We selected, Tanji and I selected links about Anzaldúa and Zapatismo that are in the LibGuide. That is that Isaac, if you can post it, or later we can post the LibGuide. And now that you mentioned, we have the things that we've been talking about right now. We have some links. If I find them. It's here. There are links that related to the topics that we just brought. The specific things that we talked today in the conversation are here. Some links for anyone that is interested in exploring. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for the LibGuide, Asa. Are we overlooking anyone? Just because we are pinned? Lisa. Yes, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Yes. Hi, nice to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you, Rosa. My mother, Connie Pardo, is here and she has a question.
Hi. I really appreciate everything that's been said here. I don't know how to ask this. I don't know if it's a question. Yeah, it is a question. I want to know if there's any messy conversation. You mentioned the Palestinians. And to me, there's a connection with what's happening in Palestine, what's happening with the Mayas, with the Zapatistas, especially in the Lacandon jungle. Now, the Palestinians right now are going through genocide. The Mayans have been going through genocide for many years, yet I don't hear any mention of that in other talks that I've heard. And even now, I don't hear any mention of this problem with the Zapatistas. Their biggest problem is genocide. And of course, from there, they go on to the other problems that you mentioned. But is there a conversation going on? Is there something going on with these issues that affect the Palestinians and the Mayas in Mexico?
When you say, sorry,
Like,
when you say a conversation, you mean a messy conversation or a conversation in the sense that is something that is happening in Mexico itself?
oh, both, Rosa.
Both.
That's
Yeah,
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, just
Especially in
wanted,
Mexico.
yeah, I want to mention something that was as I was just trying to refresh my links to share with you guys. I ran into several articles from the mid-90s and from the early 2000s where Zapatistas are addressing Palestinian occupation issues. I didn't go to explore those because I wanted us to have this conversation about introducing the muy otro and to have like a point of entry to the topic, to link Zapatismo and Anzaldúa, something like that. But the interest of Zapatistas in Palestinian situation is something that caught my attention, and I have it already in my bookmarks to go back and see how is this addressed, how is this framed, and how is connected very likely to the idea of the topics that you are bringing up, man. Because it's native populations with colonization. The number one issue that colonization did was indeed in the Americas was genocide in Mexico, genocide everywhere. So that topic of being entitled to exterminate others, it's something that has been around, and it's a topic that needs to be talked about. But I'm not aware of we don't have a particular conversation on that in that direction. And let's see how can we talk about it these days, how it is. Yeah, that would be my immediate comment, but yeah. Angie, do you?
This is definitely out of my realm. So I'm like, yeah, I'm taking notes here.
It's more like taking that, yeah, it's
But I think Consuelo made a comment
yeah,
also.
thank you,
to contribute.
Consuelo. Yeah, thank you, Consuelo, for this. Do you want to mention your post yourself, dear Consuelo?
Sure. Which one?
Okay, the 90s.
So in the 1990s, there were 1/3 of the Zapatistas were women, and much unlike what happened in the Chicano movement here in Los Angeles, much unlike what happened where women would raise their hands during the Chicano movement here in Los Angeles and try to offer suggestions, and they would be told literally, go and make tortillas, please. That was not the case in the 1990s, where 1/3 of the insurgents were women and half of the Zapatista support base was women. So it became, there's a saying in Mexico or in Spanish language households that when you educate a woman, you educate a household, you educate a community, you educate a society. Education begins at home, and it's usually with the woman. And that's a lot of what happened during the EZLN organization, because Zapatista support base was, a lot of it was women. So they made it a point to listen to the children as well as other women. And they made their efforts and the strength of the organization came from the acknowledgement that everyone was involved, including children, because children's voices are sometimes much more pure and they can see through, excuse my language, bullshit. They just call it as it is. So, and that's what happened. And aside from and going to Ms. Pardo's question about the indigenous community, aside from the indigenous community, continuing to call attention to the genocide of the people within that community. And that is applicable to almost every indigenous community. It doesn't matter. The Native Americans in Canada, throughout the United States, Native American populations, indigenous communities are constantly looking at murders. In the case of the Juarez borders or the border femicides, there are thousands now, and thousands of women have died since the early 1990s, and they don't do anything about it. And this goes to what Ms. Pardo said or asked about the indigenous community. It is much like Palestine. The difference is that the U.S., this is my opinion, the difference is that the U.S. is supplying the bombs, the money, the bombs that are killing the people of Palestine, whereas in this case, in the other cases, the U.S. is not. And that's why there are more protests. There is more attention being called to what is happening in Gaza versus what is happening here at home.
Thank you, Consuelo.
You're welcome.
This topic of genocide is so important when you look at colonialism and all the way these different versions until today, neoliberalism, that is profit by any cost necessary, including selling things like arms, for example, right? Profit by any cost necessary is at the core of racism, because in order to be able to erase people, you first need to dehumanize them, to assume that they belong to a different group or different. So racism is at the core of that attempt. So that's why we were thinking that you start going back to the bottom of this with the vocabulary. So it's people you cannot unhear or unsee once you are aware of it. The vocabulary anti-racism that this kind of a line of framework line of thinking could bring up. So I hope that this was something that can plant some kind of a idea or context for future conversations or future courses or ideas that we have here for students and for faculty and keep the conversation going. Tanji and I, for sure, are going to keep these conversations going because we are very interested, and you're welcome to visit the Diversity Committee. On Fridays, once a month we meet, and very often we end up discussing this in our tiny collegial space. So it's about to be 5 p.m. and some people probably schedule themselves to leave by 5. So feel free to leave if you have to. If you choose to stay for a little while, we're gonna still be here in a more like a informal conversation, if we can be more informal, even more informal. Yeah, thank you, Consuelo, for all these different angles that you're bringing up, different versions of the same point, right? Thank you, feminicide. Yeah, Chelsea, thank you. Appreciate discussion, naming. Thank you for being here. Mary Lou Jane, Chelsea, Jamie.
And Rosa?
Yes.
Just real quickly, as people are departing, we want to, all of us at Messy Conversations planning team want to thank everyone for your support every quarter. As I said, we had a great quarter, I think, this time around, and that's largely because of you all and the way that you show up and support the work that we're all trying to do. And we hope to see you again in July.
For those of you that are not gonna wait for July, want to keep talking, here we are.
And Rosa, EO had a follow-up question. You addressed the LibGuide part of, and I don't know if EO is still
And
here.
Asa posted the LibGuide.
Right, but she had there was more to her question that she didn't get to ask. I think she just left, so.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you're still here.
Hi, are you? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I was just curious how we can bring these values more strongly into Antioch's community.
Well, we are bringing them right now, but we're not the only ones bringing it. I believe that if we incorporate these ideas in the messy conversations like we did today, and bring them to classrooms, share with students, and follow the interest of students. If students are interested in this, there are more chances that this can be brought up in conversation in classes and curriculum. Student interest is very important for us to pay attention to.
I mean, I just want to echo Jamie Marks's comment in the comments. I feel like people are hungry for some like deeper engagement with these issues, aside from how the news media covers protests on college campuses and, you know, what counts as meaningful action and that sort of thing. I think I don't know who you might draw on for messy conversations in that regard, but it seems pretty. Maybe that's already in the works. I don't know.
Thank you. We have here. Sorry that I'm trying to go back and forth in the chat. It's Jamie. Messy Conversations Planning Committee to create an event about academia and the ongoing genocide in Palestine. That's a messy conversation request by Jamie. Ace is reminding us that we hosted a panel on Palestine on the second year, and there's a LibGuide and link to the video. And that's true. We were trying to find a way to bring this to this particular space.
Thanks for sharing those links, Asa. I love the resources you always contribute to these.
Or maybe afraid to even bring it up. No, afraid to bring up, I wouldn't say. Chelsea. No, it's just how to bring it up, as David says, how to bring it up in a way that is serves the role that this kind of conversation could have in our community.
And the ask for ideas that's a real ask. If you if you attend messy conversations and you've got some ideas about how we can address what's going on, then by all means be in touch with one of us. That's Rosa, Elaine Parker Gills, Asa Wilder, Sarah Beth Laurie, Anna Kwong, Clarence, myself, and our work study intern, Nabi Supatran.
Mhm.
I'd like to come back to the conversation that
Thank you.
Tanji and Rosa have been having, and we've all been voyeuristically enjoying. But and about the place of land, and I was thinking about that. I wasn't aware that the Zapatistas always signed their communications in that way. So that's really interesting to be so land specific. And then I'm more familiar with Gloria Anzaldúa and the way that she continually comes back to the land. I'm thinking about her, probably one of her most famous essays on mestiza consciousness, and the beautiful way that she ends that piece by coming back to the land that she grew up on. So I'm thinking about that, and then I'm thinking about others like bell hooks, and the shuttling back and forth between the margins and the center, and the margins and the center. And somewhere in here is a question. I'm not sure what it is, but this all seems, and you spoke to this in earlier, seems parallel with what a lot of indigenous activism is doing as well. So maybe it's not a question. Maybe it's just thank you for tying those things together. And if you have further thoughts on that, I'd love to hear.
I'm gonna say something very quickly, Tanji, just quickly, because when I hear indigenous activism, you remind me of something that I want to mention earlier. That is something that is unique about indigenous activism, and particularly Zapatista one, which makes it to me so I would say respectable for me, like something that I can really respect and actually support and honor, is that they don't that in order to generate proposals, right, they have a deep consultation processes that are really, really messy in order to figure out what are the things that can be brought forward or not, instead of creating a set of propositions or ideas that want to put in the world without having really the backing of everybody that put them together. Like it is like a very interesting principle of consensus building, and it's part of their way to do this prefigurative politics, is that I'm going to be in a democratic world. Therefore, I'm going to be profoundly democratic in finding out what are the things that I want to put forward, as opposed to dictate top. Because when political movements dictate propositions, they are imitating the master. They are being top down, and they are not effective, and they don't work. So and this indigenous group of Zapatistas, because they are living already the world where they want to live, that they extend that world, they are doing exactly that. So that's the inclusive. Io, you were asking about the inclusive element. Io, sorry, Io. You're thank you.
I got you,
Io. Okay. The inclusive element. So, but I'm going to stop myself because Tanji was about to say something and I stopped you.
Yeah, I don't know. It might jive with what you're saying. It was a little bit more with what David was saying. It made me think back to nosotras, which is kind of one of the things that got you and I talking, Rosa. But the concept of the us and others, and then the hyphen. And Michelle Fine takes up Anzaldúa's work in this way and calls it working the hyphen between us and other. And there's this working with Anzaldúa in this concept of mutual implication we're always leaking into each other, co-constructing each other. And I don't know, when they engage with that concept, they talk about being in a constant state of movement between us and other. And something about how you talked, David, about moving from the center to the margins, right, made me think of that constant state of movement. And I don't know, this is just what I'm thinking with what you said, David, but I think oftentimes when we imagine, I say we, because I feel like I hear this in classrooms with students pretty frequently. I do it myself. There is this desire to arrive at a just place, at an oppression-free place of like winning, of conquering, for our own goals. And that's a static place. And I think that desire for staticness or arrival can actually undermine our work, because when we inevitably don't get it, we think we're failing, or it's hopeless, or ... right? But I think that's actually really important part of that work. And I think that even ties us back to I change myself, I change the world, and the concept of art, thinking and versus doing. It's all interconnected, and the movement is the most important part of the work that we do, not where we land, if I'm making sense there. So those are some of the things that came up with what you were saying, David. Sorry if that didn't connect much with what you were saying, Rosa.
Well, are you saying that when you're saying it's the work that we're doing, not necessarily where we land? So you're saying essentially the importance of doing the work and that continuous struggle or activism?
I would say, yeah, I think the idea of arriving at a place is actually one of the things that undermines the work that we see today. We had, in past tense, the civil rights movement, right? Therefore, we can only progress in a linear fashion and only get better as a country. And I think we're surrounded by evidence that that's not the case. And I think if we orient toward that constant state of movement, then that helps us to not be so complacent, right? And that's a way of holding that discomfort as well. I'm sorry, I don't know if we can maybe unpin it so we can see the folks who are here now that it's opened up, because I don't know who said that.
Oh, that was Elaine.
That's Elaine.
One of the planning committee folks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks, Elaine. I don't know if that answered your question, Elaine.
Thank you for unpinning us, Asa. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat.
I did have one question or a point you touched on, Rosa, with the internet and the Zapatista use of the internet. Because I think it, from my familiarity with the Zapatista movement, that was kind of the angle I first read about it through, the innovative use of communication technologies, and that they were, and I think for me, it really struck home. You can see so much of the theory embodied in the actual physical infrastructure that, they have built telephone networks and internet communication networks that are decentralized and that can communicate with, the larger World Wide Web and all of that. But it really is a autonomous communication system that, drawing again a parallel to Gaza, like without that system in place, communication was shut off from Gaza. They could just close the lines, and that's not possible with what the Zapatistas have built, because it is autonomous. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that kind of infrastructure media piece.
Well, what I know about this is that this movement started to build up in around 1983, really. It was known to the world in 1994, January 1st, right? But it took like around 10 years of preparation. And one of the things, one other thing that makes it so respectable and interesting to me is that they use this thing that we talk in classrooms The organic intellectual. The Gramsci organic intellectual, that is something that we talk about, but very rarely would you see that in the world, like in our contemporary to us, right? And then this is a movement of intellectuals and professors and people that were interested in breaking academia and opening it up, and assuming that academia is patriarchal by nature because it comes from a patriarchal structure, meritocratic, hierarchical, diplomas, all that kind of stuff. So that they would be like more, it's about sharing knowledge, not certifying knowledge. And so they try to build our own thing. So use knowledge as a practical tool. So from there, they build up what the example that you gave, Asa, that is anything that is telecommunications or all those elements, certainly, but also any other infrastructure that they would need to be self-sufficient. One of them would, or not, I wouldn't say self-sufficient, but somehow take the lead in the resources, be proactive, as opposed to be like a vulnerable to others in positions. So it was interesting that they did that with food, and then with health, because the organic intellectual is not only like a philosophy professor, is a doctor. Is someone that went to receive education and somehow is extending the knowledge, the community in a practical way. So they have doctors, they have this and that. So it was a remarkable movement that was built that way. Like so everything that I read about Gramsci, if any of you guys,
you said that's
so anything I read about Gramsci and the organic intellectual, that role, this is a poster child. Yeah.
How does this framework, or I think that's a silly word for it, this lived experience include outliers? Like I know in my own cultural experience, we have indigenous people, and they are considered outliers by my cultural group, which is Norwegians, and the racism is so that we talk about in messy conversations. You know, the supremacy is held there, and I'm thinking about both the hyphen, which I love this idea that you brought up, Tanji, thank you. And also something that you said earlier, Rosa, which is being led by the collective, which I think is just a brilliant way to think about everyone having a part. But I'm also curious, having known the history of lots of outliers in cultural groups, what really happens, and how does the whole ideological framework hold that and communicate inclusion, I guess. And I think it's just coming up because of the tie to Palestine that was brought up, and really thinking about you know, when we want to bring a conversation and we know it's going to be messy, that tendency of humans to pick a side or to choose the closest group to yourself, whatever you make that up to be, is easy. And it is not easy to sit together and find a way in conversation. So I think that's where I'm coming from.
Well, you're touching on the beginning of conversation when we brought up the muy otro concept. That is the idea of alterity as something that is assertive, So I speak from the margin because I position myself in the margin, not you. You are not putting me in the margin. I put myself in the margin because from that perspective, I can address this, this, and that, and make it clear our differences. And that because of our differences is that is worth connecting. Is that kind of a stance that I see with the muy otro. One of the versions of muy otro is because of that, that is worth paying attention, because then I'm not going to see sameness. I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to be on my toes because you are not me. Sorry, Tanji.
I was pausing. I didn't want to cut you off, so I was just saying, could I add to that too? But only if you're done.
Please.
I also think really challenging the very premise of inclusion, in the sense that it tends to, maybe it doesn't have to, but it tends to kind of connote this idea of I'm on the legitimate ground. This is the ground that matters, and to include you, I invite you into my world. But I don't have to go into your world. I don't have to dismantle my world in order to bring you here. You just come here and then you conform to that. And so I actually, over the years, have just really grown wary of the concept of inclusion, because I think that more is demanded of us to achieve the thing that we want to achieve when we say inclusion, I guess is the way we put that. And I do think that the muy otro, now I'm confusing myself. Is otro or otra?
Yeah, otra, it can be otra, and then someone is gonna put the arroba or the or something.
I mean, I think that also really does point to that, as you were saying. So I think in a way that kind of echoed what you just said about that, right? We're looking for the things that don't belong, the things that we can't, the things that we can't have readily apparent to us in our embodiments and our worlds, our orientations to things, right? And I think that does demand so much more from us, and it is deeply uncomfortable.
It is. And
And then there's also along these lines, if I could just throw in as well, recognizing the other within, and once you start to recognize the otherness within oneself, right, that helps to start to deconstruct these reified models of belonging or community, or that have ossified and largely turned into policing activities, because you know that you don't have that even within yourself, right? And so it opens up possibility for exchange and otherness and speaking across divisions and difference in new and different ways.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for framing this that way, Dave. Sarbeth? So we have here Lindsay very patiently has been waiting for us to. Tanji, what do you think about this? Lindsay, can you bring it up? That you are an art therapy student? Where's Lindsay? Yes. Or I read it? What do you prefer? Hi. You need to unmute yourself in order to be part of this. Yes.
Yeah, just art therapy. I learned about the 7 stages last year when you presented. So I was excited to come back today, but I've also enjoyed all the conversation.
No, thank you. So do you see that, Tanji, like the Camino de Conocimiento adapted to art therapy?
I mean, I use it in pedagogical ways. I think of it in terms of curriculum because I am from education. So I would need to know more about the therapy approach, but I am sure, I feel pretty confident in saying there are definitely ways to adapt those concepts from, say, curricular point to a art therapy approach, but I would need more to kind of bridge that.
It already is art therapy. I think art therapy is learning from Gloria.
Mhm. Yeah. Sarabeth, you were about to say something.
I just wanted to thank you, but I also wanted to know how you made those birds fly.
If you go to the new version of this, you go to React, click on React, and now you have animated things. For example, I can do this. I can do that, what I did. I was going to the moon when David was talking, just because I'm crazy. And then
I thought
this, you can do hearts
I know.
too.
I love it. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I like to animate this. I like in messy conversations, I like to animate this.
That can be interpreted many ways.
Exactly. Open interpretation, like with this one. And I wanted, just for students that are in the room, I want to share a funky term that I'm exploring. Epistemic alert. So this is a funky. It sounds like medication, but it's not medication. I promise. So it is when you have this I'm borrowing this from different pieces of media studies and communication studies, so that when you create an intentional dissonance, cognitively you're producing in the person that is in front of you some kind of a finding my footing, and that in that moment of not finding my footing is exactly when people can address things that learn to be with ambiguity and with silence and with all these things that we try to eliminate in a more intentional way. So it's like my knowledge, my natural or my usual way of knowing things is being somehow shattered or compromised. So that's an epistemic alert. And I found in Muy Otro that is a perfect shortcut example to demonstrate epistemic alert, because it's totally dissonant. It's like, what the hell is this? Those two words together don't belong. So that's that's exactly what happened when we talked about it the first time, right, Tanji? What is this? So okay, but don't
I
let
like.
me,
Can I just say I like that there's a double meaning there, right? Like it's an alert, like alarm bells are going off, but also it creates and enables one to be more alert to
this. Awaken.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, since everyone's silent, I just want to say thank God for Antioch. Big ups to Ed Found, because I never would have known about the movement or about Gloria until I took Ed Found. And it resonated with me so much, because you have different groups, not only the enslaved people, but the indigenous people who were pretty much forced to let go of their culture. And Gloria has been one of those activists who, advocated for groups maintaining their culture. So you think about the American Indians and how they, took their children and sequestered them into Indian schools to try to erase them from their culture and to separate them from their heritage and their parents. And then you have the enslaved people who spoke many languages, who also worshiped in many different ways, and all of that was, destroyed. And then you have someone like, Gloria, who comes along and writes about this very thing and advocates it publicly and wants, her culture to maintain itself and to tell the stories and use the language and not be afraid to own who you are. And that's what I fell in love with her and Ed Found. And so I'm very grateful to hear more. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Claire.
I mean, I personally think that's one of the best parts about using Anzaldúa's work is I think she taps into some deep things that people can relate to in their own ways, and a lot of students and folks that I share her work with say similar things of like, this resonates with me. I remember I used it actually even in my dissertation research. I shared it with my co-researchers and they were like, I feel like this person knows me. Like, how is she writing so well about my own experiences? There's something really important that she's tapping into there in giving language to.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, Rosa, I don't want to prematurely bring things to a close, but I know we're trading on the goodwill and generosity of Tanji, and probably their three cats that want to get back in the room.
They're like in the door.
So do we want to start to wrap things up? Yeah. Well, just publicly, thank you to both of you so much for this conversation. And so important, especially as you pointed out, because of all the ways it seems to be applicable in our particular moment in time and history. So thank you for that. Again, thank you to everybody who keeps showing up at Messy Conversations and supporting this work. I think it's some of the important work that Antioch needs to do. So it's great to have you here. We look forward to you joining us again. I think our next Messy Conversation will be, I think it's June or July 15th, something like that. So we hope to have you back for that, for our summer session. Thank you.
Bring a friend, bring a friend.
Always bring a friend.
Bring your mom, like
'Cause
Lisa. Lisa brings her mom to the
This summer, all the Messy Conversations are going to be 2 for 1. So if one admission, you get a friend. So.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for engaging and asking questions.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Tanji. This was really illuminating. I really appreciated this.